Join your host, Maddie Roche, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roche, your host. I'm excited to have XYPN member Wendy Marsden, owner of ProsperiTea Planning out of Greenfield, Massachusetts, on the show today. Wendy is currently in what XYPN calls the scaling phase of her business development, meaning she's hit capacity to serve her clients on her own, and as such is facing a whole slew of different challenges, ranging from hiring the right people to refining her processes. Today, Wendy talks to us about how she's built two businesses, a robust tax planning firm and an RIA. She shares the history of both and the current structure of the two, and describes how, unlike other planners, she uses tax planning as a ramp-down offering from her comprehensive planning offering. Wendy shares with us some of the mistakes she's made over these years, opening up a tax planning firm with multiple CPAs to buying a building on her town's main street. As Wendy describes, the scaling phase is all about leveling up. You think you've completed something or mastered something, and there's just another level you're going to need to get to. She discusses her annual calendar, her process for engaging her clients on a quarterly basis, and even shares her best book recommendations. Wendy and I laugh a lot during this episode, and you can tell that Wendy, even 20 years into this profession, loves her work and this industry. If you're interested in what it's like to hit the scaling phase, this episode is for you. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. You can find any of the resources we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/272. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Wendy. Hello, Wendy. Welcome to XYPN Radio.
Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into you and your career and hear all about what you've built over these years. So let's start us off and why don't you tell the listeners kind of a cursory overview of yourself and your firm, and then we can dive in different questions.
Okay. Well, I started out, as one does, as an astrophysics major in college. And I minored in computer science. And I went off and started working as a software engineer. And then I was thinking about going back to grad school. I was accepted into the BU astronomy astrophysics program. I was thinking about maybe doing computer science instead. And then I realized that I moonlighted doing taxes for fun. And everybody else thought that was awful. And I had this epiphany that if something I did for fun was something everybody else hated, maybe that's what my career should be. So I went back and I got a master's. Actually, I went through an MBA program, but I took all my electives in accounting so I could shave a year off the work requirement for the CPA. And 5 years after that epiphany, I was a CPA. So then I raised my children in a home-based tax practice. And I would not see them for all of tax season. In fact, that was a really great way for my family to, my husband would be primary parent all through tax season. So we'd flip back and forth. And then I started doing more financial planning for people. I went back and I took some classes just to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And then got certified in 2013. I was certified as a certified financial planning professional. And then just used the CFP in an hourly basis for a while. And then in January of 2015, I launched as an RIA. And it didn't go anywhere until I made some huge changes in 2016. And that's what I really started the firm as I have it now.
Wow. And tell us a bit about your firm currently. Who do you work with and where are you located?
I'm in Western Massachusetts. I'm in a very rural place. The county seat has about 30,000 it draws from, and the town I'm in itself is about 18,000. You would not think that this is a place that I could make a very thriving practice, but it turns out I'm the only fee-only fiduciary in Franklin County, and I've had people clamoring to come into my practice from the beginning.
Oh, wonderful. I've got lots of questions related to that and how you market. But first and foremost, let's go back to the time that you were moonlighting taxes. Not every astrophysicist major decides to take up taxes as a side hustle. How did you get into that?
Well, I was sort of a do-it-yourselfer, and I had, my grandmother gave me 100 shares of Abbott Lab. And I wanted to figure out how to do the tax return, the dividend part of the tax return. So that was the start of that. I did end up selling the Abbott Lab when I bought a house. I went years and years without having another stock after that. But I took the H&R Block tax preparer course, and then they offered me a job working there, and I thought of it as the lab portion of the class. So I ended up working there for a couple of years and just got enough information so that I ended up going back and becoming an enrolled agent. Mm-hmm. But along the way, I also then received my CPA certification and dropped the EA when it was duplicated.
Wow. And when was it that you realized adding on financial planning was something you could do?
That's an interesting question. I've heard so many people on these podcasts talk about they didn't even know that financial planning was a profession. I got my MBA in 97. I'm sorry, MS in accounting. It was the MBA program. So I always think of it as an MBA, but literally it was not. And while I was in the MBA program, another one of the people in my program said she was there to become a financial planner. And I think that was the first time I'd heard of it. And I thought it was kind of cute, like maybe like she was studying home ec or something. Like I didn't. Later, I met a home ec major.
Oh, that's nice.
So I was like, now I understand home ec is like really cool. She knows all about food science. But but at the time, I didn't realize it was like something you do. But I was very focused on becoming a CPA at that time, and we were all about, if you're not right, you're wrong. And it's all very black and white and, research based. And I felt very strongly that I was developing a very valuable skill set as a CPA. And I do still think that that is really true. All of the learning arcane rules and having them in your tool chest so you can pull it out when the use case comes along, that's a huge skill set that I got as a CPA.
Absolutely. So when was it, and maybe just tell the listeners about your consideration in creating the RIA in addition to having this tax practice? What was prompting you to do that? Well,
the tax practice was not a livable world by the time I decided to become a certified financial planner. I had been living in this small town for 20 years, and everybody who ever had a financial emergency considered me the person to call on an hourly basis. And I'm talking thousands of people had run across me as the go-to person who was very nice and would help them, often for free. And all of the emails started with the terms, just a quick question. And I could not continue to live that way. As a tax preparer, your clientele are somewhat abusive to you in ways that you kind of buy into. But like I remember getting an email on a Saturday night saying that she had to leave at noon on Sunday, and I had to get the tax return to her before she left. And I'm looking at this email and I'm going, she's literally saying I must work Saturday night and Sunday morning for her. That is literally what she's saying. And the thing is, there's so much compulsion in taxes. You have to do your tax return. And that compulsion just kind of flows through the rest of the chain. You have to do the tax return, so you have to hire somebody. And the hired person has to do it because there's a deadline. And so sort of like in the background of the whole thing are jackbooted thugs coming to get you if you don't pay them. So it became a very challenging life. And I wanted to be helpful to people, but I had to put some boundaries around who were my people. So I tried it a couple different ways. And so one of the things I think is part of my journey is that I had a really awful, terrible, failed business in my background. So I can tell you about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things you need to know about me is that I'm all about innovation. I'm always just trying the next new thing. So I had the tax practice. I raised my children. I was doing some financial planning hourly, and my children, as they do, grew up.
No.
I remember watching my youngest child go out for sports after school and going, "You mean you don't need me at 3?"
Oh, no.
And so, one was already out of the house at that point. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I had this endless demand for tax prep services. There was no edge to it. I had to turn away people all the time. And so I said, well, what I need to do is clone myself and hire a bunch of tax preparers, and I will have the people in the tax practice feed into my financial planning practice. That was my plan. So I went to rent a Main Street office building. I was going to get a 3-year lease. And then the person said, oh, I can't rent it to you after all, the week before my lease was starting. And he said, I have to sell it. Now, I'm a businesswoman. When somebody says they have to sell something, it kind of piqued my interest. So I looked into it very briefly and then decided that I will just buy it. Main Street office building. What could go wrong? So then commenced my experience of being a slumlord, which I did not enjoy. It had a couple apartments upstairs, which theoretically could have paid for the building, but in practice never did. Also, and I hated being a landlord. So, I fixed the apartments up really nicely. Do you hear how I'm not making money? So the building, I was constantly fixing it up, making it nice, making it be what I wanted it to be. I sided it. It is now, I consider it a gift to my town. When I sold it 3 years later, I lost probably $30,000 on the building, but I lost so much money starting this business. So I hired a bunch of accountants, none of whom one was CPA track, none of the others were, but they were bookkeepers and tax preparers. I hired, trained, and supervised over the next 3 years about 12 people. And I only really got one great hire. And so about 3 years after this, it's in November, I just come back from a NAPFA conference and I'm excited, and I just walk in and I say, okay, I've done the RIA, I've done the CFP, I'm ready to really rock and roll. January of 2016, we're launching. You can start signing tax returns. And she said, I really like this job when you were training me, but now you want me to do things. And she gave notice. So I spent all that time getting her ramped up and ready, and she quit.
Oh, wow.
And I just said, you know what? I quit too.
We're done.
It was so friggin' hard. I felt like I was slogging through quicksand the entire time I was creating this business. So I had to, get the facilities set up. I called it fluffing their pillows. I had to buy their chairs and set up their workstations and set up their computers and create the job manuals and create the job descriptions and then train them and then supervise them. And I never made money on that. Wow. I just worked twice as hard for half as much money and was not doing what I loved doing, which was working with the clients. So, I mean, I was using all the grit you need when you're starting a business, and you hear that it's supposed to be good and that you're supposed to use grit, it's supposed to be hard, and you're putting a lot of hours in. But I think one of the problems I had was I didn't actually like being the boss, like at all. So I liked mentoring, but I did not like the making sure they show up to work. And I had a receptionist that like just couldn't quite make it to work during tax season. So I remember trying to like model how to do this and incentivize it. And I remember I gave her a $50 bonus one time and gushed about her having worked 40 hours the week before. Thank you so much for coming all 5 days. And she took the next Monday off because she had enough money. And so that I really disliked. So I said, okay, January 2016, I went home to my home office. I got that building sold as fast as I could. And I just started what is now ProsperiTea Planning, as it is now. And I had, at that point, November of 2015, I had about 500 tax clients. So the day that Jessica, my good hire, quit, we fired 100 clients. We just sent them all a letter. I made Jessica do it. I will not be here, so sorry, bye. Then I started finding somebody to buy parts of my tax practice and phased that out. I let about 100 people go for the next couple of years. And as of this taping, I think I have 70 tax-only clients at this point. And just anybody who would have been better served by somebody who was focused on their issues, anybody who could go to a city and find an accountant, because we just don't have accountants around here, not many. So I just offloaded. Every year we would do an offloading. Go ahead.
Wow. And so the 70 that you have now, is that, you said they're only tax clients. Do you have a plan for that you want to continue to serve them in a tax-only capacity or eventually move them into the comprehensive relationship?
Well, they're not going to move into the comprehensive relationship. And that's one of the reasons that my business model was such a terrible failure for the office building with the CPA firm and the financial planning on top. What happens, and this is back to that compulsion story I told you earlier, the people who go to get tax prep done are actively seeking a very different service than the ones who want financial planning done. It was almost coincidental if somebody came over from the tax practice to me as a financial planner. It was really quite surprising to me. Yeah, I was very surprised. And in fact, one of the reasons I decided to close my old practice was one of my long-term tax clients, really my longest term tax client. Actually, I'd seen him at H&R Block. He retired, took a full distribution of his entire 401k in cash in December of the year when he also had wages and bonuses, and put it into his savings account at the credit union. And he came in to see me for taxes 70 days later. And I'm looking at this and going, you did what? In your highest earning year of your life, you took a full distribution of all of your retirement money and you didn't invest it either. How come did you do this? And he said, well, the guy at the credit union said it'd be okay. I said, no, he did not. He told you to call your CPA. And he said, well, he did say that, but you would have charged me. Wow. And I'm looking at this guy and I cared about him a lot, but I went sort of white, hot, cold. And I very calmly said, why didn't you call me? And he said, well, I don't think of you as a financial planner. I think of you as the tax girl I hired 20 years ago. Wow. And I'm like, you know what? I got to fire all my clients, and the ones who want me as who I am now can hire me back.
What a great lesson.
Yeah. Oh, it was astonishing, because 20 years ago, I wasn't even a CPA. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So actually, that's not true at this point because I became a CPA 20 years ago. But at occurrence.
So let's talk about some of the clients that do see where you're at today and the relationships you have with them. How many clients are you serving in a comprehensive manner?
I like to think of them as my people. So I have about 70 families for whom I just do tax only, but then for my full retainer practice, I have 47 families and it's about 76 people. And 76 people, 47 families are people I see at least 4 times a year. I've got myself on kind of a calendar of appointments. And you asked earlier whether I saw my tax practice going away. And the answer is I really do not see it going away. I see the tax practice as keeping me sharp on something that's one of my most valued skills.
Cool. I
have it down to a level where it's fun. I like seeing each of these people once a year. I didn't want to give it up. I still enjoy it. Same as I did when I was moonlighting 25 years ago.
Great.
So, and they're people I care about. So, and that's, they also serve as a referral source from my financial planning practice. That's definitely happened. But there's another piece that I hadn't expected. And that is it provides an exit ramp for my financial planning practice. So I charge people under a full retainer, and those are people who I do the financial planning, the investment advising, and the tax planning and preparation. Sometimes we solve their financial planning puzzle, and maybe I don't need to manage their investments. We can stick it all in a robo or give them all a Vanguard Wellington fund or something. So in those situations, a way that they can kind of keep in my roster is if they move down to the tax practice. So they have to understand it's a substantial change in scope of service. But if I'm charging them $6,000 as a retainer client and $600 as a tax client, and they wish to see me just for the tax prep, I think it's a win for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fascinating perspective, because I know on the show we've talked to a number of people about how they do use it in the opposite direction. Tax planning equals eventual financial planning. I love this idea of a ramp down. I'm wondering, in terms of the structure of the businesses, are your tax clients clients of Prosperity, or are they clients of a separate business entity?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I had a business called Tea and Taxes for many, many years. And I had, when I started this business on Main Street, incorporated it. So it's an S Corp. So I ran the tax practice entirely under the Tea and Taxes name. And then in 2016, I started sunsetting the Tea and Taxes name. I changed the sign. I got rid of the website. The Tea and Taxes clients still call it Tea and Taxes and still went to that, and it was still its own business. But I started a sole proprietorship called ProsperiTea Planning. That's what my ADV is registered under, and I ran that for a couple years. And I think it was just this year in 2020, might have been 2019. It was in 2019. I merged it back so that I am Tea and Taxes company doing business as ProsperiTea Planning under my ADV, which simplified my books enormously. And I've handled that by having 2 different invoices for my clients in my accounting system. So Tea and Taxes has an invoice and it says how many hours I was billing for. And the retainer practice says, here's the quarterly billings for ProsperiTea Planning. And I do have an accounts receivable person now, and that's part of my scaling I will talk about.
Yes.
And so we do track the accounts receivable separately, and I am paid separately in different ways for the 2 practices. So it does add complexity, but not nearly as much as when I was running 2 separate QuickBooks files.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that breakdown. I know that'll be helpful to our listeners. Have you developed a niche over these years? I love hearing some of the stories of your ideal clients versus the folks that definitely weren't your ideal clients. And you've made a lot of references to your local area. And I'm wondering, has there been intentionality around creating a niche that is localized for you, or is that kind of just by default what's happening with your business?
Well, I run a practice that I've been doing this for 20 some years, so it was not exactly in the cloud from inception. I did prepare tax returns by hand once in a while. So I have, again, my marketing has been very slim on purpose. I mean, I write a lot, so that ends up being marketing, not because I'm intended to market, but because I'm trying to give information to my clients, and I will put it up on my website, and other people who are not my clients see it. So, so the locality was definitely just from inception. A niche I had originally was I prepared tax returns for people who were married in Massachusetts, but not federally. So we used to call them Boston marriages.
Wow.
So I'm in Western Massachusetts. It's very close to Northampton, Massachusetts. It's a very heavily gay, lesbian population here. And I have an affinity for this population. And really, at one point, many of my tax practice clients were in gay relationships. That practice, that niche, went away. We stopped calling it gay marriage, and now it's just called marriage. Yeah. So, I mean, the clients that, the referral system is still intact, and I still have many clients who that was the original reason they came to me, but it's not necessarily a niche I market to. I'm still in the community, and so that I would say is, if people are looking for a gay-friendly referral, I get those leads. But I would say that that's not unusual in my area. So I wouldn't say that's a huge issue. My niche is probably people who need the combination of tax planning and retirement planning. So somebody who's got a big chunk of money in a qualified plan and planning how to do a distribution policy. That's a strong suit of mine. I create sources and uses of cash and create a distribution plan and do a lot of tax planning around it, very precise tax planning around it. And we'll give them very precise, do a Roth conversion this year for $33,000 and use up that bracket. And this is a CD ladder we're going to build because that's where you're going to get your core money for June of 2022. So that kind of thing is a niche. And then I run and I become kind of what I call a retirement concierge for them. So they come in quarterly and we will, make sure that their spending is on track. I use Money Guide Pro and I will rerun the projections, make sure everybody's okay when the market dips or when they have a big question, can I take 100,000 out to finance my son's restaurant? No. No. And here's Money Guide Pro showing you that, whoa. So that's one niche. Another niche is people who are handling a death in the family, closing an estate, handling an inheritance. Sometimes they're not even inheriting. I'm just helping them close the estate. So I have found I'm good at that. I work pretty closely with several of the local estate attorneys. Sometimes they refer people to me when they're setting up a trust, doing their own estate planning. But and then when those clients pass away, I end up getting financial planning retaining engagement with the heirs to help close the estate. And I like that. I'm helpful in a time when it's a unique situation in most people's lives. They just haven't done it before, but I've worked through it with lots of people at this point. And so I help with that.
Great.
And yes, I have sad experiences behind that. We won't go into now, but I think anyone who's had a death in the family, understands the need for that need.
Definitely.
I have one more niche, and that is not unlike most XY Planning Network people. I really like the people who need college planning at the same time as retirement planning. How to make the same dollar stretch across different budget pieces. So I definitely take those clients. I call them the mass affluent. They're not inheriting. They're not sitting on a $500,000 IRA. They're just, maybe trying to make their salaries stretch. I enjoy those.
Great. I love that you're using the term enjoy, that it really makes it sound like it's a choice for you, whether you take the client or not. And I think for someone at your level in the phase that you're in, that's really important that you have that gauge.
I think that is something we should all be listening to Arlene on.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm up to 47 clients because I've learned how to scale, but I was stuck at 42 for a long time. And I called it my 42 seats on the bus. And I've got 42 seats. I need to put the right people in those seats. It's very similar to the EOS stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the right person in the job? Do they get it, want it, have the capacity? Are these the clients that need to be there? And so I have been working more and more on qualifying prospects. I don't even want them to talk to me until we have them into basically at least a probably or hopefully. I don't want to take a client unless they're what I would call a hell yes client.
Yes.
But I don't even want to talk to them unless they're a probably. So.
Wow. Hell yes. That's awesome, Wendy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of these challenges that you face as an advisor at your level. We describe internally, and we've kind of institutionalized the language of our business phases of the firm journey, the life cycle of any firm. You really fall in that building to scaling phase. You have hit capacity and you've been there for a bit. And that means that you're facing your own number of issues and different challenges. And as we talked about this episode, you really had some good analogies. You described it almost as like leveling up in a video game. Can you talk a little bit about what it's been like to be at this phase? And thank you for sharing that 42 number that you sat there for a bit, because that is one of our challenges at this phase.
Yeah. So what the thing that changed a lot in the past couple of years for me is that I did start moving into more proactive scaling. And to me, that involves getting a lot of coaching. It's involved doing a lot of reading. I'm almost through my second year as strategic coach. I think that has been very, very helpful for me. When I first got into opening my RIA, I did it under the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners program. So I came out of the NAPFA. I knew about XYPN Network at that point and thought about joining, but I ended up joining ACP first. And they gave me kind of a business model that I'm going to now call a flywheel. I've been calling these processes where you just grab onto the handle and start cranking, and the whole thing works. As every time I can build a flywheel into something, create a proven process, I am able to then scale a lot. So I've been trying to work on building those. And in fact, Emily Purdon has been helping with that too. When I started doing some of that coaching about a year ago, I was really, really trying to work on what I'm going to call my proven processes. So when I talk about being a business owner and facing challenges, I did refer to as leveling up. It's like you're playing a video game and you just got good at something and now it's gotten harder. So as soon as I would get good at something, it always just got harder. So one of the things I've been trying to do is every time I get into a glitchy spot, I try to figure out what's my objective and what I can do, what's the procedure. So lately I've been doing these task assignments where I will say, here's what success looks like. Here's the resources I think you're going to need. Here are some obstacles you might face, and back to resources. And then I hand the task assignment off. So that's one of the ways I've been learning how to delegate more, because I was just doing a lot of drive-by delegating. Hey, take care of so-and-so. Well, what does that mean? So I had to sit down and create a task assignment form so that I could give what success looks like. How do they know if they've done it? Every single thing I do, I feel like I have to stop and write a process for it. And then we have to start to run meetings where we check our process pipelines. So I have I have a process right now, a pipeline right now for investing. Who needs rebalancing? How long has it been since they were rebalanced? How long has it been since I checked them? And if I'm in a rebalanced moment with them, have I created a trade proposal? Have I submitted the trade proposal for their approval? Have I been approved and not made the trades yet? Have I made the trades and they're not reconciled yet? So we have a pipeline where we can track. So my paraplanner now can go in and look at the pipeline and just grab on and just start doing it. So he runs the flywheel. He can go see, oh, these need reconciling now. I have a pipeline. I always had one for tax prep projects. What stage were they in? I needed info, or it was ready for me to prepare, or needed a question answered to clear review. I knew what stage every tax return was in. Now I do the same thing with papering pipelines and with my prospect funnel. If somebody is qualified and they're in my opportunities funnel, I know what stage they're in. So everything has its own process pipeline, and we can run reports. And so once a week, we sit down and just go through all of the pipelines. That's been huge. It's huge.
Totally. Who owns that? And maybe describe to the listeners what your current staff looks like.
Good question. And you're right. So I can't just create them. Somebody has to own them. Somebody has to be grabbing that flywheel. So I have, staffing is challenging. Right now, my staffing is a paraplanner who happens to be in my dining room at the moment because of coronavirus, but is usually virtual. And he started working for me. He started to be pretty much full-time for me in September last year. That's my son, Gary. He was at the XYPN Network conference with me, and that was his launching. He'd already taken some of the CFP coursework, and so he decided he wanted to transition into this career. We don't yet know if he's a succession plan or if he's just getting trained. He's training me to have a paraplanner at the same time as I'm training him to be a financial planner. So, awesome. So that has been a real win. I think we could probably have saved a year of labor if somebody had come in as a trained paraplanner and they could train me on how to have a paraplanner, but we've been learning together. So Gary owns a bunch of these processes. He's in charge of the investing pipeline and the papering pipeline. And he has pieces he does in the prospect one. He's in charge of qualifying the leads after they've been nurtured. I have a wonderful executive assistant. I've had her for years now, almost 4.5 years. And she's been a godsend, helping me transition out of the tax practice. She was very instrumental in managing the outflow of 100 people each year, and also helping me with all of the onboarding pipeline things. As somebody comes on, what are all the things we have to do as we onboard them? And we really had to create a process for that. Originally, I thought that I would be able to, just everyone would be a bespoke engagement, that they would come in and I would just deal with whatever was what we called the spear in the back, the thing that pushed them in the door. But the reality is I have to send everybody through the same procedures or I lose track of who I've done what with. And it just was not pretty. So I'm less bespoke, and that's sad. But now I don't drop as many balls. I remember one person I did 2 investment policy statement risk tolerance meetings with in a row because I'd forgotten that I did it on the last meeting. Luckily, we came up with the same IPS.
If that's not a time to know that you need to be entering into the scaling phase, I don't know what is. That may be hands down the best example. Are you at capacity to serve your clients on your own, or have you repeated meetings?
Yeah, repeating meetings, bad. So I had one client I did 13 meetings with one year, and my meetings didn't have tight agendas. We were just trying to solve all of the problems. We didn't have them prioritized or scheduled out. So every single meeting felt like we had to do all the things. And I've gotten way better at tighter meetings through the years. Tighter meeting, they may still go long, but at least we have an agenda and we've accomplished it by the end of the meeting. So my admin assistant, my executive assistant, she does a lot of the schedule, all the scheduling. She's the one that tells me when I'm at capacity, and my capacity is based on whether I have openings for client appointments. So we have created a calendar of seasons. So I have tax season, February, March, and April, where every client is in there for a tax appointment. We will also often revisit cash flow issues at that time, but they're in for tax intake. I very rarely finish a tax return in front of them, but we will do the intake in front of them. May and June, it's all about investment policy, rebalancing, investing that IRA money that they got in there. This is where when I do my rebalancing for people most of the time. So it's all, I redid my investment portfolio formularies this year. So I usually have a big lift for each season. So something new that I'm offering to the clients. July and August for me is about vacation time and onboarding new clients. So this is when I can take somebody who I need to see 3 times over the first month or two. And so July and August. And I don't generally schedule regular clients then. September, October is I call it my asterisk meeting. It's whichever unit we're doing that year. Last year, I did a unit on getting your affairs in order. And I took everybody through a process of creating a document of here's where I buried my gold and my will is done. I told everybody their deadline to get their will done was the Dia de Mortis, the Day of the Dead. So I tried to ramp up demand to get that done by a deadline. And nobody's regretting having done that last fall. This season, it's going to be about cash flow. I'm working on spending plans, making sure everybody's budgets are under control. That's this fall season. Every November, December is about, for me, it's retirement planning, distribution planning, and also tax planning. So everybody comes in for the November, December timeframe. That turns out to be my critical path for how many clients I can take. Because after about October 15th, I change over into the next year's tax plan. And I don't have that many appointment spots then. Maybe I have a conference to go to, Thanksgiving. I almost never take Christmas week because that's when last minute tax loss harvesting happens. Last year, they came down with new tax laws on Christmas Eve. So, I almost never go away Christmas week, but I don't want to see clients. I just want to deal with emergencies then. So that's my season. Oh, and then January is also an onboarding time and also cleaning up business procedures. That's when I get the organizers out. That's when I get the year-end statements out, do some blue leaf reports. January is a busy, I have a vacation in January as well. That's my season. It's tight. I've got a tight calendar.
You do. And I appreciate that. I think that it's neat that you have so much experience in this industry and enough time having run these businesses to really know the seasonality of your business and your preferred work method around the requirements of the taxes and things like that. I'm interested in hearing your advice to maybe someone who's thinking about building their own business and what you would say to them in terms of what the most important things to consider are. You came with a real deep interest and passion for this industry. What would you say to a listener that's thinking about getting into this business on their own? What considerations to take?
On your own, I'm stymied at that. I hope that they come from a direction. I think if you said, I've just read some books, I think I'll go be a financial planner. One of the things that happens when you're serving an apprenticeship, as I did to become a CPA, is that you start out not knowing how much you don't know. It takes a couple of years for you to really figure out that, boy, there's a whole lot you didn't know about that subject. I was just doing something with annuities the other day, and I know enough about annuities to know that I don't understand those payout options. So, but 15 years ago, I would just said, annuities all bad, get rid of them. And now I'm a little careful. And the same with taxes, like all the things you don't know, you don't know. So I would really recommend people try to get through their journeyman phase working for somebody. It makes me nervous when people just think that they know this stuff and can go do it. So a couple of years of experience somewhere, at least 3 years experience somewhere before you try to be on your own.
Absolutely. I'm interested, Wendy, in your opinion of the future of the industry. And I always say this, that we don't have a glass ball, but you went from moonlighting and handwriting tax returns to now kind of a global world that requires us to be virtual. That's just one of many changes that our industry is going through. What have you witnessed over these years as big pivotal changes in our industry? And where do you think we're going to go over the next 10 to 15 years?
So the fee-only fiduciary piece, I think, has been a huge pivot in the world of financial planning. I think we all understand that when people went from being sales associates to being professionals, that was the largest of the pivots. I do think that there is a lot more respect for my role as their wealth professional, as their doctor is a health professional. And the analogy I use is that I am the doctor and the guy down the street in the brick and mortar store is a pharmacist. So we both know we're both trained. But if you walk in saying, my ankle hurts, the pharmacist will say, here's the things I can sell you. And I'm going to tell you to put it up on a footstool with some ice on it.
Great analogy, among other things, I'm sure.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the professionalism of our field, I think, is catching on across the country. Everybody, and I think NAPFA really was leading the way on this, and way more than the CFP board, in my opinion. I think NAPFA has been raising the bar all along the way. Everyone who finds me on the internet found me through NAPFA. Really, that's about, I think I had one person find me through XY Planning Network's site. But yeah, it's NAPFA. So what's the future look like? I think there's more coaching involved. I was just saying to my assistant earlier that I have somebody who really could use more help with getting debt under control. And I know how to do it. It's not my niche. And as we all know, it's dangerous when we have like one-offs of things. But what she really needs is somebody to say, so how's it going this month? You said you were going to do this. Did you? Just that touch. So I saw a new software product out called Nudge, and I wanted to look into that. Maybe that will help me with this. The touches, maybe we schedule the touches the way people schedule Twitter feeds. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a future.
Awesome. Great. Any last tips for our listeners, Wendy? You've given so many really good points, a lot of insight. Honestly, I've learned a lot about what it may be like to scale a business at your stage with the amount of experience that you have. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners?
I would say to make sure you create the job description, retraction and how they create job descriptions. And then you look for people who get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. I spent 3 years in that business till I discovered that I couldn't get good employees. And if I had just waited to see if I could get good employees before I opened the business, I would have saved a lot of money. So make sure you know what the job is. Maybe have the flywheels created. Here's the process. I need somebody to show up and crank this flywheel. Maybe do some personality testing, Colby testing, some kind of getting a fit in. I have no skills in that. I wish I did. that's a weakness I haven't solved yet. But yeah, do not just see what your brother-in-law can do. Find out what the job is, and then see if somebody gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do it.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy, for the work that you've done for this industry and your clients, but especially on this show today. I know our listeners will have taken some really good notes and good thoughts away from this.
I do have something else I wanted to mention. In my notes, I wanted to bring up a couple books that I found useful that I thought people might like. So The Experience Economy by Pine is a really, really interesting book to read for any financial planner. It talks about creating the stage your clients are on. So I have a motto. My vision for my business is we provide valuable information in a timely manner to fantastic people who we really care about. And everything the clients see has to reflect that. So every day I aim to relieve and delight them. I aim to remove things that annoy and add things that delight. We have to stay knowledgeable so our information is valuable. We have to keep good systems in place so that we can be timely with our valuable information. We have to create a good prospect funnel so that we only get fantastic clients. And we have to have good work-life balance so we bring our whole selves to each client interaction so we can really care about them. So all of this is, the Experience Economy talks a lot about that. Strategic Coach talked a lot about that too. Another one is Dora wrote Measure What Matters and talked about objectives and key results. And then Gino Wickman riffed on that with the whole EOS system and traction. I think those are hugely, hugely important to anybody who wants to scale. You can't just have them show up and be pleasant in your general environment. They have to have a reason they come to work. They have to know if they've done a good job. They have to not be your assistant, but they're doing their job. And you can tell if they did it, and they can tell if they did it. And it's not subject to the whims of whether you like them or not. So have good job descriptions, have key results.
Great recommendations. And I have read the EOS book, Traction, that Wendy mentioned, and I will vouch for that. When we implemented the EOS model nearly 3 years ago at XYPN, I really felt like we became a company. Thank you, Wendy, so much. Our listeners, I know, can find more information about you online. I appreciate all of your thoughts, Wendy, and your work here.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to share this with other people.
Avocado toast. Selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone, and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.